Donald Trump greeted the revelation that Comey was being indicted by saying that this would be an easy case. And he's probably right, just not in the way that he means. He implies that it's open and shut, and it is. There's no case. And like, don't take my word for that. I'm not like a lawyer or whatever, which means that I'm probably qualified to serve in the DOJ these days, but you shouldn't take my legal advice. When you talk to the actual lawyers, they say that there's basically nothing here. Remember, the person he first set to look at evidence of Comey said, we can't prosecute this, there's nothing. That's not a confidence move. And also the fact that Donald Trump has been so clear in literally on social media directing Pam Bondi and Lindsey Halligan to go after Comey could probably be used by Comey's defense team to argue that this is targeted a prosecution. So that could probably help him too, even if he doesn't get off on the actual merits of the case. And there seems like there's a pretty strong case of that. But that said, let's turn to a little bit of the discussion about the future of this case that happened on ABC News last night with Dan Abrams.
Dan, all of these public statements from the president could actually help James Comey get this thrown out by a judge.
Correct. I mean, look, that's going to be the first question: is this case even going to make it to trial? Is a judge going to throw out this case? And that is certainly going to be part of the defense's argument, is citing each and every one of the social media posts by the president demanding this prosecution and looking at the sort of the history of how we got here.
And if that happens, we could see this whole thing go to the Supreme Court.
We could, but I think that the more likely scenario is that the Supreme Court would be happy to let the lower courts deal with this one. That's my guess.
And that certainly seems possible. The Supreme Court has not given Donald Trump 100% of what it wants, but it's a high number. I mean, it's not impossible. But that said, let's go to you, Waz. What do you think? Does it make it to trial? Does he end up behind bars? What do you think?
I don't know. I feel like this gets thrown out before it goes to trial. But again, because Trump is so influential over there at justice, that this might just go all the way and waste, millions upon millions of our taxpayer dollars so that Trump could prosecute, some petty grievance.
The last thing, something there.
The last thing that I would say, man, is that this has kind of got me thinking, and I'm a little bit conflicted in the sense that I remember when Barack Obama got elected, a lot of people like me were pissed that, he wasn't going to take the previous administration to task for what they did in terms of the Iraq war and the Afghanistan war and the lies and the deceit and the corruption. And everybody thought that was BS. And there was this sense that he was like, oh, well, we're going to move forward, right? Like we're moving on. We're not dealing with the past. And I think the point of that, I think there was wisdom in that, in the sense that we can't have a system where every time somebody comes into power, the people who aren't in power are at risk of going to prison, right? Like it would definitely start that sort of cycle going, but at the same time, like declaring that to be the case leaves it open for people like Donald Trump to be like, I'm just gonna be as corrupt as humanly possible and know that I'll never face any, consequences for it because I became president. It's really tough to really contemplate, honestly.
Incredibly disturbing, right? That this can be the way that it's approached, and I can't help but just bring up how culpable and blameworthy the Democratic Party is for all of this. Sorry to be like mad and pissed about stuff, like all of us, but instead of doubling down on just supporting working and middle class people, they went after Russia. It didn't work, and it set up the seed of this. It set a precedent for the brazenness. He exponentialized the brazenness, the outrage. Like that's what these guys do. They take something that has a kernel of truth and then they spin it back in their own way and just make it exponentially crazier and more outrageous. And it works because of our dystopian media and fragmented social media environment. It works because it just spirals people into in various bubbles and into more extreme positions, right? It just works within a dysfunctional anti-democratic media environment as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's lots of failures. I guess, is it even pointless to point out that, like, in the past 50 years or so, when you had presidents who were, wanted basically all the power to be their own, like with Nixon or whatever, you'd have people in his own party who would check him. Like, is it even worth acknowledging that the Republican Party isn't worth a damn? They're not worth 3 cents. Trump could literally walk into the Senate chamber and start gunning them down, and the last one standing would still give him a thumbs up as he cocked the gun in his direction. Like, you would hope that you would have something. You have nothing. Comey said in that video we showed, don't live your life on your knees. But all of them live their life on their knees if that's what it takes to not have him attack them on True Social. That's how easily they've been bought. And meanwhile, we're gonna be reporting on this story for the next 6 months at least, if not a year or two. And meanwhile, as I talked about this morning on the damage report, we found out in a New York Times piece of reporting in the last week that Steve Witkoff went and met with an oligarch from the UAE and set up a deal whereby they gave $2 billion to Trump's family crypto business. And then the Trump administration gave hundreds of thousands of advanced and rare and restricted AI related chips to the UAE. And most people don't even know that that story exists. $2 billion. Campaign finance restrictions have nothing to do with it. It's just money transferred to the family. Meanwhile, James Comey held hearings for like 4 years because he believed that Joe Biden had been given $5 million by China, and he couldn't prove it with half a decade of time to do that. This $2 billion thing, you're not even gonna hear about it again. It's absolutely wild, the position we've gotten in. The Democrats seem utterly incapable of getting people to focus on these things. I understand in Congress they have no power. They can't do investigations. They can't call hearings. They can't really subpoena people. Maybe they'll do that if the midterms go well. But this is a pathetic place, again, that our country has ended up in. Any final thoughts from either of you before we end this segment?
I mean, I guess, time will tell how the Democrats respond. If they are able to take back the House, I do think there will be recriminations for like these clowns at Doge and all of that stuff. Like, they will be hauling and subpoenaing a lot of this Trump stuff on the periphery up to Congress. I think that'll definitely happen. It's just, to me, it's just a matter of like, who's gonna be leading this charge? The confidence that I have in the current leadership structure. And it's not, and again, folks need to understand there's the leadership structure, but there's also the funding and fundraising mechanism that exists. That, like, the way the party is structured right now, they can't just turn on a dime from these blood-sucking consultants and the mega rich donors and the corporate interests. They can't just do that because that's how they pay to keep themselves alive. So I'll just be interested to see if these guys ever even grow a spine and buck up against the moneyed interests that fund the party.
I mean, I totally agree. It's like, I mean, you all on the Young Turks are always talking about the distinction between establishment and populist. I would say it's also sort of institutionalist, same old kind of low-level corruption versus insurgents. Trump is an insurgent, even though he's doing the best ever for the wealthiest and most oligarchic ever of any establishment ever, right? But he frames and comes across as an insurgent. There's no Democratic insurgents. I mean, of course, there's several, but there are none in major positions of power within the party. And you can see how long it's taken and how our boy Zoran can barely get Hakeem Jeffries, congressional leader in New York's endorsement. He's an insurgent in the loving, positive way because he brings people together around real affordability issues. And Hochul, Kathy Hochul gave the endorsement, but kept saying the whole darn 2-minute thing, how many times she disagrees with him. Like, what is so disagreeable about someone who has love in his heart, who just wants to bring people together and give them the basics? That should be the Democratic insurgency. But you're right, if they're stuck with this inertia and they don't even know what they stand for, and that you talk down to people and say everything's okay, even though you're suffering, you can't afford anything. Your kids are in student debt. You can't even have kids. You have them eating crappy food. Like, if you talk down to people, they're going to hate you even more than this guy who most people know is lying the whole time, but at least says stuff that matches people's anger. It's just as simple as that. Is any Democrat going to step up and be an insurgent and lead and take it on? You know?
Yeah, and I think we need that, but we also need something far broader. As you pointed out, it doesn't matter that for like at least 3 presidential cycles now, people have been like desperately calling out to not just do things the exact same way they've always been done. And the establishment is never gonna just hand that over. Why would they? Chuck Schumer is never gonna just step down. He needs to be defeated. Hakeem Jeffries is never just gonna become awesome. Like he's had, all of them have had time. They've been in office for years, decades at this point. It's never gonna happen.
Definitely not
Mamdani,
awesome.
He's an extremist and a radical, even though he is running away with the race. Despite all of these attacks and the lack of the endorsement, maybe because of that, he's doing so well. AOC polls like 20 to 30 points better than Chuck Schumer, but she's a ridiculous radical and Chuck Schumer is very reasonable. It's ridiculous. There needs to be some equivalent of the Tea Party to finally sweep these last dregs. I'm sure you've seen the polls going around where they've shown that like on average over the last 20 years, the Democratic Party's approval has gone down 1 to 1.5 points every single year. Even during the Obama years, where he was a relatively popular president, the party keeps going in the wrong direction. And we keep just putting up basically the same exact presidential candidate every 4 years. And sometimes, in the wake of a pandemic or something, things have become so bad that they'll vote him back in. But we need to go in a different direction. They're not gonna just change. They're not just gonna hand it over. It needs to be taken from them.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.